Okay, I wanted to review a few of the problems that involve imaginary and complex numbers that you need to know to be ready for the test. So taking a look at this first one, we have the square root of negative 64 minus the square root of negative 16 plus the square root of negative 25, and we're simply going to evaluate these. All right, so considering the square root of negative 64. First of all, when you have the negative underneath the square root, okay, that basically represents the square root of negative 1. So we already know that there is an I outside of the square root. And the square root of 64 is a perfect square. It's 16. I'm sorry, it's 8. 8 times 8 is 64. So that is going to become 8i. The square root of negative 64 is 8i. Now we have minus, it's going to bring down my minus sign, minus, and then the square root of negative 16. Well, again, the square root of 16 is 4, but since it's a negative 16, that's 4i. So that one is going to become 4i. All right, and then we have plus the square root of negative 25. Well, square root of 25 is 5, but the square root of negative 25 is 5i. So that's just going to be plus 5i. All right, so now you simply have 8i minus 4i plus 5i. Those are all like terms. We can add those together. 8 minus 4 is 4, and 4 plus 5 is 9. So your final answer would be 9i. 9i. Let's take a look at this one. This is 7 minus 3i times 6 plus 5i. So basically, we're going to have to FOIL this because we have a binomial times a binomial. So let's go ahead and start. So 7 times 6 is 42. And then 7 times 5i, well, that's going to be positive 35i. Then we have negative 3i times 6. Well, that's minus 18i. And then finally, we have negative 3i times 5i. Well, the negative 3 times the 5 is negative 15, but the I times I is I squared. So we're going to write that as minus 15i squared. Okay, well, these two in the middle are like terms, 35i minus 18i, so we can go ahead and work that out. So let me just write this as 42, and then we have the 35 minus the 18. It's going to be plus 17i. And then here, the minus 15i, well, or I squared. The I squared actually equals negative 1. So in a sense, I could replace that with times negative 1. Well, negative 15 times negative 1 is positive 15. So basically, you're going to end up with, here you have negative 15 times negative 1, which makes it plus 15. And then 42 and 15, you can combine those two. It's going to be 57. So our final answer is going to be 57 plus 17i. Okay, in this one here, we're going to evaluate I to the 27th plus 1i to the 15th minus 7i to the 53rd. Okay, so remember, we're talking about these exponents, okay? Well, an I to the 27th, we want to think about dividing that by 4, okay? Well, 4 would go into 27, 6 times. 6 times 4 is 24. So what we could say essentially is that this one is made up of I to the 24th times I to the 3rd. And the I to the 24th, well, that's divisible by 4 6 times, so that's going to be a 1. So I to the 24th becomes 1. So in a sense, we could kind of cancel it out. And what we're left with there is that 1i to the 3rd. Now, when we think about I to the 15th, and we divide 15 by 4, well, 4 we're going to 15 3 times with the remainder of 3 as well, because it is made up of, our I to the 15th, we could say, is made up of I to the 12th times I to the 3rd. Because 4 times 3 is 12, so all of that becomes 1, and we're left with I to the 3rd. So again, in a sense, we cancel this out, and we're left with adding 1I to the 3rd. And then on this last one, minus 7I to the 53rd power. Okay, so 53. If I think about 53 and I divide it by 4, I'm actually going to get 13.25, or 13 and 1/4 remainder. So in other words, 4 goes into 52. So we could say that this one is made up of I to the 52nd power times I to the 1 power. But it's minus 7, so we could rewrite this as minus 7I to the 1 power. I'll write it like this, minus 7I to the 1 power. Again, because I to the 52nd became 1. Okay, now we have to combine all this. Well, this is 1I to the 3rd plus 1I to the 3rd, okay? Well, that's not hard. That's just 2I to the 3rd when we combine these two. And then we have minus 7I. Well, we need to remember what I to the 3rd equals. And I to the 3rd, we know from our table that I to the 3rd equals negative I. So in a sense, this says 2 times negative I minus 7I. Well, 2 times negative I, that just makes it, 2 times negative I is negative 2I. So we would call that negative 2I minus 7I. Now they're like terms with the i's, and a negative 2 minus 7 equals negative 9I. And that would be your final answer, negative 9I.